So the California standards are similar to Euro 6 standards, except they're different in two different ways. First, we have much more stringent NOx control requirements, and that's because we find that NOx is an important contributor to our problems for PM 2.5 and ozone. I think the other key difference is we have very rigorous enforcement programs. So we actually not only certify the control technologies in the laboratory, but we go into the field and confirm that they're performing adequately on the road. So the primary technology used in California and actually throughout the United States to control particulate matter is a diesel particulate filter. So this is a catalyzed filter that captures the soot and then burns it periodically. And what we have found is that this control technology is 99% effective at reducing particulate matter. And then for NOx, we have what's called selective catalytic reduction. So we find that that's actually reduces NOx emissions by 90%. And right now we're testing in a major project in cooperation with the engine manufacturers and companies that develop control devices, further NOx reductions. So another 90% reduction. So overall, a 99% reduction in NOx. And what we're finding for diesel, it's improvements to how the engine operates and improvements to the SCR technology. At the same time, we're also testing heavy-duty vehicles that run on compressed natural gas. And what we find is if you use a three-way catalyst similar to what used in automobiles, modern automobiles today, that's also effective at reducing NOx. So in California, we actually have improving air quality. So it's improving on order of 5% per year, and that's because these diesel controls are being implemented. So for heavy-duty vehicles, trucks and buses are primarily diesel vehicles, and the technologies I talked about are very effective and really reducing emissions quite dramatically over time. In California, we have very few diesel-fueled passenger cars. They're almost all fueled on what you call petrol, what we call gasoline. Yes. And those are also going down dramatically over time. So we have a fuel neutral policy. We don't allow any technology or any fuel type to meet a different standard. So we feel it needs to be a level playing field. We set the performance-based standards. As long as the various fuel and technology types can meet these standards, then it's really up to the market to decide which is preferred. So in California, you see a little bit of a transition to natural gas vehicles, but that's mostly because natural gas is now cheaper in the United States than in the past. And so even though these compressed natural gas vehicles are a bit more expensive initially, over the lifetime of the vehicle, fleets that actually have the refueling capability for natural gas are converting to them. But it's strictly a fuel neutral policy, and it seems to have been very effective. So we're very focused on reducing PM 2.5 because it's the biggest driver for health concerns. At least 90% of the health effects associated with air pollution are from PM 2.5. What we have found in California, that is, as we've controlled PM 2.5, we've had this co-benefit of reducing black carbon. So black carbon levels in California have been reduced 90% over the last 45 years, primarily because of controls on diesel engines, but also we have restrictions on agricultural burning, we have restrictions on trash burning, and burning used to heat your home. And so those, combined with our diesel control policies, have reduced black carbon quite dramatically. So in California, we feel it's very important to reduce CO2 to address long-term concerns about climate change, but at the same time reduce what are called the short-lived climate pollutants, things like black carbon and methane and hydrofluorocarbons. So we feel that we should control both. And in California, because the particulate matter from the vehicles is already controlled to a great extent, most of the carbon footprint from vehicles in California are due to CO2. So we're improving fuel efficiency of those vehicles. We are reducing the carbon intensity of the fuel by mixing in renewable fuels. And we are developing strategies to reduce how many miles people drive by basically designing better cities so you don't have to drive as much. So our governor just set out a goal of reducing petroleum usage in California 50% from now to 2030. And then by 2050, we have to essentially remove all the carbon used for transportation, because we have a goal of an 80% reduction in CO2 or greenhouse gases in general by from 1990 levels. So I grew up in Los Angeles in the 1970s when air pollution was as bad as it is in Beijing today and India. And so, you know, maybe different pollutants have higher or lower levels in the cities, but in terms of visible pollution, I think they're somewhat equivalent. You know, there were cases when I was growing up in Los Angeles, you could only see a few blocks down the street. It hurt to breathe, and I've experienced that same thing in both Beijing and Delhi. But I think the California experience has been that we can reduce air pollution. We've reduced it 80 to 90% for ozone, particulate matter, toxics, carbon monoxide, nitrogen dioxide. And we feel like we've actually haven't hurt and actually in some ways benefited the economy. So, you know, people desire to live in California. We've grown to a $2 trillion economy, the 7th or 8th largest in the world. All the air pollution control has created a lot of jobs. And then the health benefits of reducing air pollution have outweighed the control costs by a factor of 50 to 1. So hopefully the experience that we went through in California over the last 40 years are something that can be replicated in the mega cities of the world today. Well, I think first you need an understanding what are the sources that contribute to the air pollution. So obviously smoking diesel engines are a big contributor, but maybe there's questions about how much power plants outside the city that produce sulfate pollution, how much are those contributing to the problem? How much is burning? How much are gasoline vehicles contributing? So I think you really need to have a good understanding of what are the sources, and then you can determine the policies, which I believe the Indian government is doing. They seem, I met with them yesterday, and they seem very focused on trying to improve the situation here.